Good day to you. Nobody likes to break the law. And certainly in the media, there are a lot of laws. Yeah, there are laws about what you can say and laws about what you can't say. And that's what we're here to talk about today as we take on chapter 13. Yeah, we're taking on media law today. And let's talk about the core of media law, which is the First Amendment. The First Amendment is where it all starts. The First Amendment in the Constitution is stating that everybody has the right to free expression. Yeah, it's a very important law that serves as the basis for most of the laws as they travel through the court system. It almost always comes back to the First Amendment. But interestingly enough, when it comes to broadcasting, the First Amendment does not apply across the board. You cannot, for example, yell fire in a crowded movie theater any more than on broadcasting you can swear and use profanity, and a word like F-U-C-K is just impossible in media. So we're going to talk today about why media have rules that curtail free expression more than we have free expression being curtailed in real life. Let's talk about the roots of American free speech, because our country was founded on this idea that we have a democracy and people should be able to talk about ideas openly. But has that really been the case? In fact, when it comes to media in the colonies, newspapers, as you might recall from the newspaper chapter, newspapers have to be licensed. They have to be licensed by the British Crown. And the British Crown is not going to license a newspaper unless that newspaper is giving favorable coverage to the Crown. So that right away is a control on the media effected through illegal means. You have to be licensed. Early on in the colonies, there were some cases of people who ended up in trouble because they tried to cross over the line of free speech. We've got the John Zenger case. John Zenger and his wife Anna Zenger, they were independent editors and printers, and they accused the New York governor, Governor William Crosby, of replacing Supreme Court justices, state Supreme Court justices, with justices that he liked. And so they were criticizing his choices, saying that he was making them based on personal preference. And the governor put Zenger in jail for that. But the jury found Zenger not guilty, and they established that truth is going to be a defense for libel, another area of law that we're going to get on in a few minutes. That came out of that court case. Similarly, we also have other limits on free speech that are taking place in the early colonies. There were these laws that used to be passed called Alien and Sedition Acts. Alien and Sedition Acts, and these are false or malicious statements against the government, the American government, and you can be tried for that as a reporter. In fact, the Scottish immigrant James Callender, he was thrown in jail in 1800 for criticizing the Adams administration. He called them repulsive. He called Adams repulsive, and he called him a gross hypocrite and unprincipled oppressor. Those are strong words for back then. So those acts, the Alien and Sedition Acts, are used a lot during war times, especially during World War II, when the country is afraid about patriotism and whether people are demonstrating patriotism. Also, Congress has gotten in the act of passing acts that curtail free speech. They've got the Smith Act, for example, which makes it a crime to advocate for the overthrow of government in a violent way. It's illegal in this country to advocate for that. We've also got the U.S. Patriot Act, which was written right after 9/11, which permits the Justice Department to tap wires, to tap phone calls. Every time you make a phone call overseas, Justice Department could be listening in. And then we have a whole gamut of obscenity laws that also curtail free speech, which we'll be getting into a little bit later. All right, now within the law, we have laws that are protecting individuals when it comes to media coverage. And the first one we want to talk about is libel law. Libel, L-I-B-E-L. Libel is when you have media content that hurts another person's reputation unfairly. It hurts their reputation. It has to have three components to it. You have to actually hurt that person's reputation. They can demonstrate that, by the way, by showing that they lost their job, or they couldn't get a promotion, or they couldn't get a raise, or they were treated badly at work. So defamation is causing reputation, damage to the reputation. That's the first component of libel law. The second component is identification. That means that the person has to be specifically mentioned in whatever the media content is. You can't say all doctors are drunks, for example, and that would be a case of libel. You would have to say a specific doctor is, and of course be wrong about it. And then lastly, there has to be publication or broadcast. In other words, if somebody has to see the content, it can't be produced and end up in a studio and nobody sees it. So it has to be seen. Those are the three things that allow you to bring a libel lawsuit against somebody. But then there are also defenses against libel. You can claim, for example, as a reporter that what you said was really bad and what you said was really hurting a person's reputation. They didn't get a job, but guess what? It was true. So truth is a defense in libel. Also, privilege is a defense in libel. Privilege is a tough area to understand. It means that comments were said in court documents, and since the court documents were sealed, that they can't be said in public. So if you unseal those documents and talk about an allegation by a politician against another that was sealed, that's going to be seen as not privileged anymore. And then we also have opinions. Opinions are protected by libel too. It's okay for you to call the New York governor today a jerk. That's perfectly protected. So one of the landmark court cases that helped define libel was a court case called New York Times versus Sullivan. Sullivan was a police commissioner in Alabama, and the New York Times published an ad by a pro-Martin Luther King group. And in the ad, it made a lot of allegations about the Alabama police commissioner. It said a lot of factual inaccuracies. And so the Alabama police commissioner sued the New York Times, and the New York Times actually won that case. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the New York Times case affirmed that even though the New York Times got information wrong, since this person, the police commissioner, is a public official, it's more important that we have a discussion about ideas than suppressing those ideas because a couple facts may be wrong. If the New York Times decided not to print the ad, or if the New York Times was fined for printing this ad, even though it had a lot of factual inaccuracies, they may never print another ad. So the Supreme Court ruled that libel can sometimes occur even if a newspaper is wrong about it. As long as the newspaper did as good a job as it can to try and find the facts, then the libel case is not going to go forward. And furthermore, public figures in general, this court case ruled, they have a harder time bringing a libel case. That includes celebrities and politicians. Anybody who runs for elective office, they have a hard time bringing a libel case. Because the law says, hey, if you're going to run for office, if you're going to be a celebrity and use the media to acquire fame, then you have to put up with the bad stuff that comes with it as well. There's also various court cases that have come along that protect an individual's rights in the media. One is intrusion. You can't, as a reporter, go into a person's house with your camera and take photographs. You can stand on the sidewalk, which is public property, but you can't take your phone and walk into somebody's house and start recording and broadcasting. That's intrusion. Also, we have embarrassment as another area of the law, capturing a person naked, capturing a person falling down stairs, capturing a person drunk, and you can't just broadcast that. Also, we have an area of law called false light. False light has to do with portraying a person in a false light. If you do a news story, we're talking a lot about news stories, a lot of the area of law has to do with news. Let's say you're doing a news story on a neighborhood that's alleged to be a crack cocaine infested neighborhood, and you go out there and shoot video, and you happen to shoot a college student walking home because that's where they live, and that college student is associated with the crack neighborhood. That's what false light laws are about. And then there's another area of law called misappropriation. You can't take a person's image and make money off it. Like Tiger Woods, you can't make money off of him to drive people into your golf shop unless you have his permission. Social media and privacy, that's still playing out. There's a New Jersey case that says if you post something just to your followers, you have the right to expect that it won't be shared. And if it is, then it may open up some of the areas of law that we're talking about if it's shared beyond your followers. But then a California court case in 2009 said that someone who posts complaints that are then printed in a newspaper does not have privacy protection. So social media is still up in the air. Let's talk about some other areas of the law designed for your protection. One is the free press, fair trial area of the law. There are two amendments that guarantee that you get a fair trial. One is the 6th Amendment, one is the 14th Amendment. And both of them are guaranteeing an impartial jury if you go to a court case. The reason for that is the court case of Sam Shepard. In 1954, Sam Shepard's wife was murdered. And he was interviewed and said that he had found a nappy-headed intruder in the house, which had a lot of racial overtones to it. And the press investigated his story and found out that actually he was having an affair. And they they printed that in the newspapers, and there was this huge public outcry. Here's this well-known medical doctor having an affair, accusing his wife, accusing a non-specified African American of murdering his wife. There was a lot of fanfare, a lot of media coverage about that, and he was convicted. But then the conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court said he didn't get a fair trial. So out of that, because all the media bias, so out of that came the idea that juries in courtrooms in the future can put a gag order. They can tell people that they cannot speak in public. They can sequester the jury. They can take the jury and put them in a motel and said, you're not going to be exposed to newspaper reports. They can postpone the trial. They can change the venue for the trial. Now let's talk about controlling the press. Controlling the press has always been an issue between government and the press. The press, or the media, doesn't want to be controlled. There's a court case, Cohen versus Cowles. In that court case, a Republican found out that his opponent had been arrested for theft, a Republican who was running for governor of Minnesota, and he hired a PR person to reveal this information to reporters, but only on condition of anonymity. And they ran that story, and Cohen was identified anyhow. He was identified by the story. So Cohen sued, and he won. The media have a right to live up to contracts. There's another court case, Food Lion versus ABC, in which reporters pretended to be Food Lion employees, but they were really reporters recording meat being handled very badly in this grocery chain. And Food Lion sued, and Food Lion lost. The jury awarded Food Lion $1, saying, in essence, that it was not right that the reporters went in and faked that they were not reporters and report on what was going on, but it was not right that they then, but it was more important, I should say, that this information was made available to the public in the public's interest than it is protecting Food Lion's right to hire people. So that's what that $1 statement said. There's another area of law called prior restraint. This has to do with censorship in the media. There's a court case called Neer versus Minnesota. Jay Neer, he was a publisher of a press, and he published a lot of racist information, particularly anti-Semitic, anti-Jews. But the court ruled that the government cannot suppress a publication just because it's offensive, so that publication gets to stand. We also have free speech and students. Free speech and students. Students in a court case, Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeyer, they decided to create a student newspaper story that was reporting on teenage pregnancy. And the principal said, hold on, we're not going to let you publish this. And they lost that case because the ruling was that if the high school, in this case, has a course that's associated with the newspaper, the high school has the right to censor that newspaper. And that has implications for college media as well. So there we have several areas of the law. You can cover the rest in the chapter on your own. Have a great day.